Today is the 23rd of September, and it feels like autumn is right around the corner. And if I want to make the most of my photography this season, it's really important that I start preparing now. Well, hello everyone, welcome back to another video from a very drizzly North Wales, where it feels like autumn is right around the corner. The leaves here have started to turn, and now is the perfect time to start planning so we can make the most of our photography this season, which is something that I'm determined to do this year. So today I'm going to talk about that process of planning your autumn photography, give you some advice, share a few tips, and show you this beautiful woodland which I'm about to go and explore. Now, I don't know about where you live, but here in North Wales, autumn seems to come and go in a moment's notice. We can go from having no colourful foliage to the foliage being way past its peak in just a few weeks. And because of that, a big thing that I'm an advocate of is exploring locally, or trying to do the majority of your photography as close to home as possible. This morning I'm in my local woodland, and I was here literally 2 days ago, and it's crazy how much it's changed in just a couple of days. The greens have started to go a little bit more yellow. The colours that had already started to turn have gone even more vibrant. And that's why it's important to explore close to home, because it's going to keep changing day by day. So the more that you can get back to a location, the more time you can dedicate to exploring it, the better chance you're giving yourself of getting photos that you're going to be really happy with. Now, the benefit of revisiting a familiar place often is that you get to know it a little bit more. And when I was here a couple of days ago, I just had my phone with me and I saw this tree behind me, and I just took a quick iPhone shot of the composition, just because I like to review it and sort of, I guess, assess the merit of the scene before coming back with all of my camera equipment to sort of get the shot. But it was a shot that I thought had a lot of potential, so I thought I'll come back today with the camera to see how that photo translates into an image that I can properly edit with, you know, high resolution, higher megapixels, all of that great stuff that a mirrorless camera will give you. So let me just quickly talk you through this photo. So the form of this tree was just something that really caught my attention. I love how the limbs of the tree sort of spread out into the frame, and you have the path which we've just walked up in the sort of bottom right-hand third of the image. And there's a really nice contrast in light here as well. Sort of this part of the image is, you know, a lot brighter than this part of the image here. So if I can in post start to manipulate the tonality between the light and the dark, then that might make for a potentially good image, especially if we get a lot of foliage here that starts to turn. That contrast in color is also something that I think could work quite well. I'm not sure if this will be the final composition, but I think conditions today are slightly more reminiscent of what I'd hoped to get, with some diffused light, you know, caused by either some light drizzle, some fog, some mist, all that sort of stuff. So let me take a photo of this and put it on screen, and we'll see what we think.
So I have exaggerated the colours a little bit in this edit, but this I find helps me pre-visualize what I would like the final result to be. So don't be scared to take test shots and manipulate them and over edit them if it helps you see more clearly what you hope to achieve when the conditions are right.
Now, another really important tip is to do with the weather. Now, today is a very rainy, very cold, very drizzly day. It's kind of miserable, really. And it's not a day you might typically think to go out with your camera. You could probably think of a million other things you'd rather do on days like this. But actually, these types of conditions are perfect for woodland photography, especially as we transition into autumn. The thing that I struggle with woodland photography is when there's very bright highlights and harsh contrast. You know, when you've got light that's very bright, direct sunlight that's penetrating through the leaves, through the canopy, it casts a lot of very unflattering shadows on some of the things you might want to photograph. And drizzly days that are a bit overcast, a bit misty, they're perfect because they act as a big softbox. They diffuse everything. So today was a day that I knew I had to come out and do some photography because there's no mist per se, but the rain is very fine, and that in itself is creating this really nice kind of softening effect over everything that I'm photographing. But I need to be quick because this sort of stuff doesn't last very long. Weather like this, especially if you've got mist and fog, it always tends to linger in the mornings. By the time you get to sort of mid-morning, a lot of it is kind of burnt off. So that's why I'm saying I need to be quick, because I really need to make sure that I'm making the most of this before the day kind of properly begins, I suppose. So if you are looking to do woodland photography, I recommend setting an alarm, getting up nice and early, because that's when you're probably going to get the best conditions. Now, a piece of advice that really benefited me when I first started getting into woodland photography was thinking about what kinds of woodlands I was going to go and explore and eventually photograph. Here in the UK, not all woodlands are the same, and I'm primarily drawn to ancient woodlands. These woodlands typically have old oak trees, they have silver birch, they have beech, maybe some ash trees, and these types of trees provide great compositional opportunities. Newer woodlands and plantation woodlands typically won't have these really characterful trees, and whilst they still have photographic merit, if you want to get those really uniform shots of, you know, really tall pine trees, for example, then a plantation or a new growth woodland is going to be great for that. But I think if you want to just get the kind of essence of woodland photography, then try and find the really old woodlands if you can. Now, ancient woodlands are so beautiful. The woodland that I'm in today is a good example of that. There's so much variety in terms of the trees, and there's a lot of chaos as well. It's very difficult sometimes to find compositions. It's why it's important to revisit these locations time and time again, because you really need to take the time to get to know them. And finding order amongst that chaos is one of the hardest things in woodland photography. It's the thing that I'm still working really hard at trying to improve on. And if you're just getting into woodland photography, it's definitely frustrating at times. But especially in autumn, when there is just so much foliage and there's so much beauty within woodlands, I'm going to talk about some things that you can look at in terms of photography subjects, aside from trees, that can still give you a great shooting experience this autumn. So let me talk you through some of these. So when I said rain can be favourable for woodland photography, I wasn't quite bargaining on it being this rainy. This is pretty ridiculous, and I don't think I've ever been more soggy than I am now. So we might have to wrap this up back in the office, but I'll persevere because I haven't finished the walk yet. But let me just dry you off.
So it was far too wet to finish this video out in the field, but I want to wrap up a couple of final points. So we were just talking about some other subjects in woodland photography that can be great subjects if you're not necessarily enjoying photographing trees, if you're finding that a little bit difficult, because there's nothing wrong with that. You know, autumn is such a great time for photography that really the aim is just to get as many good photos as we can. So if that means photographing something a little bit different just to give you that enjoyment, then I think it's well worth pursuing. And this is something that I've spent a lot of time doing over the years, and that's focusing on the smaller details within the woodland or within the landscape. It's what I would class as more intimate landscape photography. Now, someone who is absolutely fantastic at this is Simon Booth, a brilliant photographer. He has a channel here on YouTube. He has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the natural world, and a lot of his photography is a little bit more intimate. It's more macro. It's focusing on the leaves, of the textures, of the, you know, the smaller details within the woodland and within the landscape that a lot of people might miss. And there's a lot of beauty to be found in those types of subjects. Noticing how the leaves glow when they're backlit against the sun. That was a shot that I took a couple of days ago that, you know, it's a bit abstract, but it just looks really, really pleasing. You can also mess around with things like ICM or intentional camera movement photography. Again, that can create a really great effect within the autumn environment because of all of those lovely colors and because of all the contrast created by the separation within colors. You can get some really, really nice effects by just messing around with some intentional camera movement, shooting at a slower shutter speed and moving the camera around as you take the exposure to create almost like a painterly effect. And I want to circle back briefly and talk a bit more about the weather, because we can't be scared of those rainy, stormy days and use that as an excuse to not go out and take photos. We can't be fair weather photographers in the autumn. So if it's raining, get out into the woodland. I think if you're going to do that, one piece of equipment that is really, really beneficial is a circular polarizer. A circular polarizer is definitely your best friend in a wet woodland because it's going to cut through all the glare that's caused by the water on the surface of leaves reflecting the light from the sun. What it'll do is it'll remove that glare and it'll saturate the colors, especially if the foliage and the leaves are wet. So if you want to get punchier photos, if you really want to accentuate the color, then a circular polarizer is definitely a piece of equipment that is well worth investing in the autumn. I find polarizers to be very useful all year round, but if you really want to kind of get the best autumn photos, I think a polarizer is definitely the one piece of equipment, aside from a camera, of course, that can really, really help. So I will leave it there for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found these tips helpful. If you did, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and come and join me next time for another video.